What is up, everybody? Escape 211 here, and we're going to do another session of Is It Good? This time I want to focus on a weapon set, and that weapon set is going to be the RPGs. Now, when I do these series, specifically for the weapons, I'm going to group them all together because a lot of the comments related to them are going to still function, whether it's the 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever energy it is. It's going to apply to pretty much all the set for the most part. The differences I'll talk a little bit about, but it should apply pretty universally. So the RPGs is a weapon that you get early on, thankfully, and it's one that is a pretty good weapon. I think it's quite useful. It is your first explosive weapon, which means it's an area effect based weapon. So the RPGs, the missile racks, and then the rocket mortars, I think, are the three main explosive type damage weapons. Each of them function, of course, very differently. I've talked about RPGs and the missile packs and how they vary. But I want to talk, obviously, today about the RPGs and if they're good or not and if they're worth the time to invest in. RPGs, I will say, are one of the earlier weapons that you get and probably one of the best early weapons from my experience to use in terms of their flexibility for their damage, their decent range. They do splash damage. There's just a lot of benefits to this as a weapon, and there's not a whole lot of early game weapons that do as well as this. I feel like the autocannon doesn't output enough damage, same for the thermal lance, and then even as you get into some of the uncommon weapons, I feel like the RPGs still even beat those out for the early game. So overall, I would say in that sense, unlocking the RPGs is really just worth it. Absolutely. Unlocking each of these, RPG 2, 4, and 6, all are based on a credit cost. They don't use A-coins, so already that's a big plus, and I see no hesitation in unlocking any of these. All right, it's definitely a weapon you should unlock and start using. But the idea is, do you upgrade them? Do you spend the time to upgrade them? Well, this weapon is based on, like I said, explosive damage, and it also has no fall-off damage, which means that whether it's at range, 5 meters or its max range, which is 105, right? Yeah, 105 meters. It's the same for all three. There's no damage fall-off, so there's no optimal range on this one like there are for some other weapons. So it gives a lot of flexibility. However, it's a slower projectile, so it's harder to hit your targets, especially fast-moving targets, when you get beyond like 60-ish meters, maybe a little bit more like 70, 75. It's difficult to hit with missiles. This is the same for both RPGs and missile packs. The benefit, I guess, of the RPGs in that sense is its upgrade path. As you upgrade, of course, you're going to get more damage out of your magazine per shot, but you're also going to boost your projectile speed. And that is the benefit of this weapon in terms of like its growth path. It allows you to get more accurate shots from further away. So it gives you better accuracy within that whole optimal range area, which is your entire path. So there's a lot of benefit to that. When you compare it to other stuff, and especially as a early game weapon, it lets you hold better accuracy while still maintaining pretty good damage. So that in and of itself is quite nice. The other thing I want to say, of course, is that the RPG, this is a positive and a negative. It's kind of a middle of the road comment to make, but the RPGs come in the form of RPG 2, 4, and 6, and each of them come in a pair. They don't come as a single weapon as some do later on, which is nice. But the point, I guess, is you have a 2, 4, and 6. Each of them have a separate upgrade cost and path. And, the question is, which ones do you invest in? Should you invest in all of them? Well, that's a good question. And it really depends on your loadout. As you can see with mine, I've really only invested primarily in the RPG 6 to 3 stars, and I'll explain why. Ultimately, in this game, you're going to hit certain points where you want to get your mechs to a specific energy, either to 8 energy, 12 energy, 16 energy, 24, or the max 18 for some of them. Those energy caps, for most of them, you're going to dual wield whatever weapon it is. You're going to dual wield an 8 cost weapon, 2 4 weapons, or 2 to 8 cost weapons or energy weapons when you're at 16. The benefit of doing that and the reason for doing that is you're upgrading only one thing. For example, if you have 16 energy, a good thing to put on it would be the Missile Rack 8. Why? Well, first of all, they're really good, I think, as a weapon. So spoiler alert for that video when we get to it. But the point is you only have to upgrade the Missile Rack 8, just that weapon on its own, to be able to use it well on both sides. So there are some mechs that 12 is the highest energy cap you can have. So the rank 6 or the energy cost 6 RPG makes sense to upgrade because you're going to dual wield that. The reason why I don't really spend too much time on the RPG-2 or the RPG-4 is because those are usually filler weapons you use with something else. For example, let's say you have 20 energy on a guy, and you're going to put like a 16 energy weapon on it, like a Zeus, and you need something else to fit in that other 4 energy slot. You could put an RPG-4 there, for sure. But how many mechs and setups are you going to have that you're going to use that kind of a setup for it? That means you're upgrading the Zeus or the railgun. Sorry, I keep saying Zeus. That's what it used to be called. You keep upgrading the railgun and the RPG-4, but you're only using in that instance, and you're basically doubling the amount of resources that you have to spend to upgrade both of those things to get the max damage potential. And remember, this is a common weapon, so you're spending a lot of resources on a common weapon to upgrade it, to use it in a, not so common weapon loadout. So I guess my point is that you have to think about what weapon loadouts you're going to have and which ones you're going to find the most effective and the best to upgrade. And to me, from my experience, from efficiency of resources, I find that the dual base weapons that are either going to get me to 12 energy or 16 energy or 24 energy work the best, just to make it easy to upgrade when I only have to upgrade one weapon. So hopefully that makes sense into all that kind of process. So the whole upgrading process with each of these, and like I did before, I want to talk about the cost. I did some more math calculations to get an idea of the cost involved in upgrading these. Now, the benefit of upgrading these really, like I said, comes from the increased damage and then that added projectile speed. So to get the max projectile speed, you would have to get to rank 5 on any one of these given RPGs. So that's a pretty heavy investment. It's not to say that it's not completely worth it, because the damage on these is actually pretty considerable. And when you get to a certain damage level on these and you start comparing it to the missile racks have a higher burst damage, but these have a higher longer sustained damage. Like per rocket, if you unload all your rockets into an enemy, I believe the Missile Rack 6 should give you more energy than, the RPG 6 should do more damage than the Missile Rack 6. So I'm pretty sure that's the case. I'd have to look at the numbers, so you don't have to quote me on that, but it's pretty darn comparable, especially when you consider this is a common weapon and that's an epic weapon. So that means, is it worth investing in each of these to get it to a higher level? Like I said, I think it can be, but from my experience, I feel like there's going to be a certain point where you drop off using this weapon. I think that the Missile Rack 6 and 8 have greater overall benefits to make them worth using in the long term, or once you can unlock them, over any of the RPGs, unless you're just filling a spot of just an awkward energy cap until you get your mech to a given amount. I mean, I had my Panther. I was using an RPG at one point with Zeus when I was at that 20 energy like I was talking about. But now that he's at 24, I wouldn't put the 6 energy with it, just because that would mean I'm not efficiently using all of my energy. Plus, if I'm using the Zeus, I keep saying that, the railgun, it makes more sense for me to have another long-range weapon with it to just completely benefit from that long range overall. At least that's the way I feel. Some people like to have flexibility in different style of weapons, but I think this is quite effective, so I've been using that setup recently. But in that instance, when I'm at 24 energy, the highest weapon you can have is 16 energy. So it doesn't make sense for me to then go down to a 6 energy based weapon as my counterpart and, not have full energy consumption. I'd be at 22 energy instead of 24. So it's just kind of it's an oddball setup, like for most guys when you get to their highest potential energy. There might be a case for when you're at 18 energy, like if I wanted to put, if I had Zephyr at 18 energy, which I don't, he's just at 16. But if he was at 18 and I wanted to put a railgun on him, I could use an RPG-2 with that. I mean, that's a good filler spot for that. But is it the best one? I mean, a case can strongly be made for the thermal lance going on with the railgun, and that's better. So I don't know. It's just hard for me to justify upgrading all of these RPGs. So with that said, though, I want to talk about each of these in terms of their cost structure for upgrading. First of all, the RPG-2, the unlock cost for it is only 825 credits, really cheap, and early game, you're going to be hard pressed to find something that fits better in the 2 energy category. The early stuff that you get, autocannon, thermal lance, even when you get into the shotgun and plasma cannon, which I believe are both unlocked through A coins, so it's more costly. But with all these common weapons, it's the best 2 energy in terms of its flexibility. Autocannons are better for sustained damage and longer range accuracy. Thermal lance is more of a support weapon, especially at 2 energy. You're just trying to get that overload, what is it called? Overheat. The overheat procced on a guy. And RPGs are going to be more about like decent damage, dealing with crowd control in the best way you can that early in the game. So RPGs, I think, are one of your best weapons to unlock. So that initial cost of 825 for the RPG-2, or no, I'm sorry, 825 credits is very small. To get it up to 2 stars, you're going to spend 10 A coins, so not that much, and 14,500 credits, which honestly is not that hard to get. 14,500 credits you could get in like a day or two. Doing all of your dailies, being involved in tournament, and unlocking a few or opening up a few crates. You're going to hit that number pretty quickly. So that's really not that bad to invest to get to 2 star. To get the RPG-2 to 3 star, it's 110 A coins, and then 78,750 credits. So a bit more. Again, a decent size investment, but that could be, still like maybe half a week to get them to 3 star. So not terrible, not too hard. And that's about where I did with the RPG-6. That cost structure is slightly different, but mostly just in the A coins, and I spent more on this, and it wasn't too bad to achieve. Then we get into higher numbers. The 4 star, 460 A coins, and 213,750 credits. So that's a good chunk of change. And at 4 stars, he's getting that projectile speed to 22.5. So, fair amount. But to get it up to rank 5, which is where you're going to see your best increase based on it, projectile speed and all that, the projectile speed won't change at rank 6. So I would think rank 5 is probably all you want to go to, if you're even going to go that far. And the cost for that is 1,110 A coins and 478,750 credits. So it's quite a bit. And that's just the RPG-2. Now, if you go on to each of the other ones, I believe the credit cost per each doesn't change, but the A coin gets higher just because it's a higher bracket, being a 4 or a 6 cost, there's just a higher cost associated with it. I can give you some of that too. So the unlock cost for the RPG-4 is 1,675 credits. Then after that, you get into your A-coin cost. So I'll just give you the rundown of the A-coin cost, since the credit cost is going to be the same. The RPG-4 at 2 stars is 25 A-coins. At 3 stars, it's 225 A-coins. At 4 stars, it's 875 A-coins. And at 5 stars, it's 2,150 A-coins. So yeah, a bit more of an involvement there. And like I said, with the 2 and the 4 cost, I don't think that they're going to be great long term. Investing in them some, like maybe a couple hundred A coins, if you use them frequently, isn't bad early game. But I think after that, you're just going to see a drop off of use. You're going to be unlocking more weapons. You're going to be unlocking higher grade weapons. And you're going to be unlocking weapons that are going to fit those 12 and 16 and 24 energy slots much better than either a 2 or a 4 cost weapon. This would be the case with any 2 or 4 cost weapon, mind you. I mean, this isn't about these specifically. It's just about any of those, I think, is where there's a question of it. The only exception might be, like in the previous video, we talked about Lancer. You might take him up to 3 stars. Then, yeah, he's at 8 energy, which might mean that, sure, you might want to get the RPG 4 and have that. Or you might have an 18 energy guy that needs to still have a 2 cost slot weapon. Then yeah, an RPG 2. But I think those are a less common case. And you only start to understand if you're going to want those if you specifically gravitate toward a specific mech. But in general, I would say the 2 and the 4 cost energy are not really that good. They're not really a great investment. Now the 6 is where I would say there's a little bit more sense in the investment. I invested in the 6 because I was testing it in comparing it to the missile racks, and it's a decent weapon. It's not bad, and I think it's a pretty good one for some investment. And it makes a lot of sense when I have 12 energy guys. Like, I've put it on my Ares, I've put it on my Killshot, I've put it on my Juggernaut, and they're all at 12 energy right now, so it has a lot of good use there. And when I specifically have RPG based quests, this is my go-to weapon because it does the most damage and it'll do the most kills, you know, because usually weapon based quests are about how much damage you do or how many things you kill. So I think that this is a good weapon for that. But aside from that, I don't really think it's you know, going to be the greatest choice compared to some others. But this one, let me give the rundown of some of the cost for this weapon, the RPG 6. So this one, to unlock it, it's 2,500 credits. Not bad. Totally worth it. Like I said, all of these are worth unlocking, especially in the early game. To get to 2 stars, your credit cost, again, is universal between all of these. So we'll just talk about the A coin cost. So 2 stars, it's 25 A coins, pretty small. 3 stars is 300 A coins, which I did, and I still think was a pretty good investment. That's not too costly. At 4 stars, it's 1,250 A coins, and that's where it starts to get questionable for me, borderline, and why I stopped. And then at 5 stars, it's 3,125. And that's where you see the most benefit from your projectile-based speed. I'm fairly certain that if you were to do rank 6, it is just about the stat boost, and that's it. I've seen other weapons that when you get to that high, it will change from saying projectile speed for that benefit when you're on this screen, where it says the extra rank gives me, 7.5 projectile speed. If I was at 5 stars going on 6, it would say extra rank upgrade bonus, increased stats. That's all it would say. So it's really just the stat increase when you get up to the 6 stars, which, I mean, if you heavily use these, you may see a benefit out of it. But I think by that point, you've unlocked a lot of other options of weapons and mechs that it's going to be less of a concern for you. So with all that said, the base question, all right, this is the too long didn't read moment, too long didn't watch moment, where you basically say, is it good? Is the RPG worth it? I think the RPG is definitely worth unlocking, and it might even be worth investing some into. It is one of the best early game weapons you have. My personal opinion, though, once you start unlocking other weapons, you're probably going to be using it less. So you want to pepper how much you invest into this weapon. I would say, again, 2 to 3 stars, fairly conservative, not a bad investment, especially in the early game. Going up like 1 star on any of these isn't a bad thing. But I would then, once you get up a couple, maybe 3 stars, start to question, okay, what other stuff am I going to unlock? Where am I in my prize path that I'm going to want to start unlocking and using before I use the RPG? So that's really where my thought process goes with this weapon. So it's a good early game weapon. It's all right to get and a decent one to invest in, and certainly better than some of the other weapons that you have in the 2, 4, and 6 cost slots. but not one that I think you're going to see as an endgame weapon when compared to some of these other ones that you'll unlock once you get up into the rare, exotic, and prototype-based weapons. So, yeah, hope that kind of clears up the idea of this weapon. Is it good or not? I personally think it's decent. Yeah, we'll call it that. It's a decent weapon. Not amazing, but decent. So we'll just I guess call that the end of this is a good series. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you guys have certain weapons or certain things, certain mechs that you want me to talk about for this series, please let me know, and we will see you out there on the battlefield.